Welcome to Reddit Stories, where OP's wife demands to live off-grid and he wants no part of it. Am I the jerk for refusing to live off-grid with my wife, even though it's her dream? I'm 33 and my wife is 31. We've been married for 6 years and we both work from home in remote jobs. We make decent money. Nothing extreme, but we're comfortable. We rent a nice house in a quiet neighborhood. No major issues. Things between us have always been pretty steady. That is, until recently. Over the past year, my wife has gotten really into this idea of going off-grid. It started with a few YouTube channels she found that show couples or families living on remote land, building their own cabins, growing their own food, and basically just cutting off from modern life. At first, I thought it was just an interest, something she liked watching the same way other people like watching cooking shows or home makeovers. But it didn't stop there. She started reading books about it, following more creators and joining forums, and now she's absolutely obsessed. She says she's tired of living inside the system and wants to be self-sufficient. She believes modern life is making everyone sick and disconnected from reality, and that we'd be much happier if we were living off the land. Recently, she found a plot of land a few hours away that she says is perfect. 10 acres, wooded area, cheap and very remote. She wants to build a tiny home, set up solar panels, and basically just disappear from society. No grocery stores nearby, no neighbors for miles, just us, the trees, and a pile of work. I told her I'm not on board. I don't mind the idea of simplifying our lives a bit, maybe taking more nature trips or downsizing in some ways, but completely cutting off from everything? That's not the life I want. I like being close to a hospital if something goes wrong. I like having food delivered when I'm sick. I don't want to be chopping firewood just to stay warm during the winter. I tried to explain to her that what she sees on YouTube isn't the full picture. A lot of those off-grid channels are curated. They make everything look peaceful and meaningful because that's what gets views. But the real day-to-day of that lifestyle, it's exhausting, physically demanding, and mentally isolating. It's not some permanent vacation. She got really upset. Told me I was too attached to comfort and that I'm letting fear control me. She said this is her dream and that I'm being selfish for not supporting her. I told her I'm not stopping her from enjoying nature or making changes to our lifestyle, but I'm not going to uproot my life and live in the woods just because she's bored and thinks that we're part of some broken system. Now things are tense between us. She barely talks to me. The other day, she even said maybe she'll just move out there by herself and I can come visit when I'm ready to wake up. I honestly don't know what to say anymore. I love my wife, but this feels extreme. So Reddit, am I the jerk for refusing to go along with her off-grid dream? Or should I be more open-minded and supportive, even if it feels totally unrealistic? Not the jerk. Wanting to live a simpler life is fine, but demanding your partner give up stability, comfort, and basic infrastructure because of YouTube fantasy land is a bit much. You're not against nature or change. You're against unrealistic expectations and freezing your butt off in the woods with no Wi-Fi. Totally reasonable. No jerks here. But honestly, your wife's idea sounds kind of amazing to me. I get that it's not for everyone, but I'd love to be in your shoes with the chance to unplug and live off the land for a while. It sounds like an adventure, not a punishment. That said, it's totally fair that you're hesitant. This kind of lifestyle change only works if both people are fully in. Not the jerk. This is literally how every horror movie starts. One partner gets obsessed with some off-grid idea, drags the other into the woods, and next thing you know, you're being chased by a maniac. You're absolutely making the right choice by not giving in. Dreaming is great, but abandoning reality because of a YouTube fantasy is not the right move. Update. So, things took quite a turn. 2 months ago, my wife was still 100% committed to the idea of going off-grid. We'd been arguing more and more about it, and I didn't know what to do anymore. Then she ended up connecting with a woman on one of those off-grid forums she follows, and this woman invited her to come visit their homestead for a week to get a real taste of the lifestyle. It was in rural Montana. My wife was ecstatic. I thought, maybe this will be good. She'll finally see the real side of things and understand where I'm coming from. So she flew out there. That first night, she called me absolutely glowing. She said it was even more amazing than she imagined, that she felt freer than she ever had before. She loved feeding the animals, walking barefoot in the garden, breathing real air. She kept saying, "This is what we've been missing." The next night, though, she sounded different. She told me she nearly stepped on a rattlesnake while walking near the chicken coop and totally freaked out. The other couple laughed it off and told her it's just part of life out there. Apparently, they see snakes all the time. My wife tried to laugh it off too, but I could tell that it shook her. She admitted that she had been feeling on edge ever since. Then, in the middle of that night, I woke up to my phone buzzing. She was crying. She said she had woken up to something crawling on her, and when she turned the light on, it was a scorpion. She screamed, and again, her host just shrugged it off like it was no big deal. The husband casually scooped it up in a cup and tossed it outside. Meanwhile, she was panicking and couldn't go back to sleep. The next night, she called again. This time, she told me she had changed her flight date and was coming home 2 days early. She said the neighbors had been shooting rifles all afternoon and the sound was nonstop. She asked if I knew how loud a rifle is when you live in the middle of nowhere with nothing to block the sound. That was the moment she realized this lifestyle isn't for her. She admitted she doesn't like the bugs, the snakes, the isolation, or spending all day doing manual labor in the sun. She missed takeout. She missed Netflix. She missed me. She actually said, "I just want to come home and feel safe again." I can't tell you how relieved I was to hear that. I told her coming home early was the best idea she had had in weeks. I didn't gloat or say I told you so, but inside I was practically dancing. Anyway, she'll be home tomorrow, and I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who weighed in on my original post. A lot of you helped me feel sane when I was starting to think maybe I was the one being unreasonable. Turns out, sometimes people really do have to experience something for themselves before they see it clearly. So yeah, we're not moving off grid, and I've never appreciated our flushing toilet, air conditioning, and bug-free bed more in my life. Off-grid living definitely isn't for everyone. A lot of people who live their whole lives in the city have no idea what it's actually like. They romanticize the peace and quiet, the gardens and the chickens, but they forget about the snakes, scorpions, and busted plumbing. Anything can look beautiful when it's framed the right way on YouTube. But I'm glad your wife got a taste of reality before you both made a huge leap that you would have ended up regretting. Well, folks, let this be a reminder that off-grid living sounds a lot better in theory than it does when a scorpion is in your bed.
Yeah, and if your idea of farm life comes from Pinterest boards, maybe just boot up Stardew Valley instead. Seriously though, it's one of my favorite games I've ever played.
You don't even play Stardew Valley anymore. All you play now is Disney Dreamlight Valley.
Silence, you fool.
I let myself into the apartment next to my girlfriend's to prevent a fire. Now she's mad that I filed a police report about it. I was staying at my girlfriend's place for the weekend. She lives in one of those older 2-unit houses that were split into apartments sometime back in the day, with wooden stairs that creaked and narrow hallways. She's been excited about a 1/4 pig she bought from a local farmer. All week she talked about the bacon, the ribs, the sausages they packed for her. So around 8 that morning, when I smelled bacon drifting around us, I got hopeful. I went down expecting she had started cooking something, but her kitchen was clean. Whatever I was smelling had to be from the neighbor next door. At first, we didn't think much of it. The neighbor in the other unit was a guy in his 20s who kept odd hours. Sometimes he was up late, sometimes he slept until noon. About 3 hours later, an alarm started going off on the other side of the house. We figured it was his alarm clock. He had a habit of letting it ring a while. Eventually, I got up to throw some laundry in and caught another whiff of something that didn't fit. It wasn't bacon anymore, more like something getting too hot. It clicked then that the alarm wasn't a morning alarm, it was the smoke detector. It had been ringing long enough that it was starting to blend into the background noise of the day, and that bothered me. I went outside and around the building to the side door of his unit. Through the window, I could see smoke floating above the stove area. Not the thick kind that means flames, but enough to fill the air. On the couch across the room was the neighbor, completely knocked out. I banged on the door until my knuckles hurt. Nothing. I tried the handle and it wouldn't budge. Now, I'm a locksmith by trade and I had my picks with me. I tried to get the door open the clean way fast, but sometimes old locks don't feel like cooperating. I decided not to waste the extra seconds, and I ran to the front door to try that one. To my relief, it opened. No tools needed. Inside the place, I could hear the smoke alarm screaming over everything else. I went straight past the couch and toward the kitchen. On the stove was a pan full of bacon that, at one time, probably looked amazing. Now it was crisped into charcoal. Beside it was a giant omelet giving off its own kind of smoke. Both burners were still running. I got the stove off, moved the pans into the sink to cool, and I let the smoke drift toward the open door. Once the immediate problem was handled, I checked on the guy on the couch. He was breathing normally, just out cold from what looked like a late night or a long shift. He stayed asleep through all of it. I headed back to my girlfriend's apartment, and about 15 minutes later, we heard movement next door, so he woke up fine. He never came over to ask what happened, never said thank you, nothing. Now here was where things got complicated. Because I'm a locksmith, I know what it means legally to enter someone else's unit. Even in emergencies, things can be twisted around if a person wants to make noise about it. I didn't want anyone saying that I broke in on purpose. I didn't want my job affected. So later that day, after leaving my girlfriend's place, I filed a report so it was on record that I stepped inside to handle an emergency, not anything shady. That felt like the responsible thing to do. Last night, my girlfriend and I were out at a brewery. She was going to drive me back to her place since I'd been drinking. I told her about the report. I expected a quick nod or something like that. Instead, she got quiet. Then she looked upset. She left shortly after without saying much. She drove back alone, and I had to take a cab home. This morning, I cabbed back over to get my car. Now she's giving me the cold shoulder and telling me we need to talk tonight. I'm assuming she's mad I filed the report. Maybe because she thinks it'll cause trouble with the neighbor or the landlord. I'm trying to understand how to talk to her about this. I filed it only to protect myself and my livelihood. I wasn't trying to cause a problem for anyone. I also don't know why she's this upset, and I could really use some help understanding it. I'm struggling to imagine what she thinks you did wrong. You didn't cause the smoke. You didn't leave the stove burning. You didn't break a window or damage anything. You handled a dangerous situation quickly and responsibly. Filing a report is something any professional in your position would do to protect their record. If anything, the neighbor should be thankful you kept the entire house from going up. What's the dynamic between you two and the neighbor? Friendly? Awkward? Completely separate lives? I'm wondering if she's reacting to something that has nothing to do with the actual event. Maybe there's tension you don't know about, or she doesn't want someone around her unit to get in trouble with the landlord. Either way, her reaction seems bigger than the event itself. Update. Wow, a lot has happened in the last 24 hours. So, we just broke up. We talked on the phone for around 15 minutes. She said I didn't respect her feelings and she was done. I tried asking what she meant. I explained that everything I did was meant to keep people safe and protect my job. She didn't want to dig into any of that. It felt like she had already decided the ending before the conversation even started. Someone in the comments here said it sounded like she was already looking for a way out, and after that call, I have to admit, the thought crossed my mind. She didn't want a back and forth. She didn't want context. She just said her piece and waited for the conversation to end. We'd been dating off and on since last summer and became official around Thanksgiving, so it wasn't really a quick fling. We even had a vacation booked in 2 weeks, a full week in the Caribbean, already paid for. We briefly mentioned the trip before the call and agreed to figure it out later. I'll make sure to update you all and ask for advice when I need some. Today, I need some clarity and to be away from the subject, so don't expect a lot of updates, but I'll try to step in from time to time. I did also want to say thank you for everything you've said. There are so many of you that helped me find a peace of mind that I otherwise would have had much more trouble with. After sitting with everything, I realized this isn't something I can pull back together. If she didn't want the relationship anymore, no amount of talking was going to fix it. I called a friend to clear my head. He told me he noticed something change after Thanksgiving too, but didn't want to say anything before. I guess I was too close to see it. Right now, I'm trying to accept that this is the end. The breakup isn't what hurt the most. It's realizing that she had probably checked out of the relationship a while before any of this even happened. Update 2. Tonight, I found out she canceled my flight for the Caribbean trip. No warning from her, just an email saying the booking was changed. Out of curiosity, I started doing some digging and was able to find out that she's now going on the vacation with her ex-fiancé. Everyone who said there was more going on was right. I wish you weren't, but you were. She didn't break up with me over a report or a neighbor or anything like that. She was already moving in another direction. She just didn't want to say it outright. I'm cutting all contact with her so I can have a clean break and move on to the next part of my life. If anyone has recommendations for a good place to wander with a single flight voucher, I'm open to them. She didn't want to be in the relationship anymore, and this was the moment she grabbed to make it final. The timing makes it obvious. People who are committed don't switch vacation partners in the middle of the night. She had already detached, you just didn't know it yet. You handled everything responsibly, and she reacted like someone who had already chosen a different path. So the guy saves the building and gets dumped for it? Tough crowd.
Honestly, he should have asked the smoke alarm for relationship advice. It was the only one screaming the truth.
At least he dodged a vacation third wheel situation.
Right. Imagine showing up and finding her ex already holding the beach towel. I'd turn around before the sand even hit my feet.
Am I the jerk for insisting my niece is co-flower girl with my fiancé's niece? Planning this wedding has felt like a big team project for me, 26 male, and my fiancé, 25 female. She grew up in a huge family with a long list of traditions they followed for every wedding they've ever had. Sisters lined up on one side, nieces and nephews doing the younger roles, cousins drifting in and out of the planning. My family's the opposite. It's just my parents, my sister, and my niece, Bryn. Bryn is 3 years old and pretty much my best pal. I've been in her life since the day she came home from the hospital. Her dad passed away when she was a baby, so I've tried to be the steady male figure she can rely on. Ballet shows, tiny bikes with training wheels, sleepovers where she insists on brushing my hair even though I have nothing to brush. She's my buddy. I'm her godfather and I love her to bits. When we started choosing the wedding party, I didn't mind that my fiancé didn't pick my sister as a bridesmaid. My sister didn't mind either. I also didn't argue when my fiancé asked me to put all her 4 brother-in-laws on my side. It raised an eyebrow in my head for a second, but I shrugged it off. It felt like one of those things that wasn't worth fighting over. I figured we were building something together, and sometimes you give more on one side so you can pick your battles. But then we got to the little kid roles. Her nephews had spots. One was the ring bearer. The older ones were junior groomsmen. She had one niece named Aubrey, who's 4, and she wanted Aubrey to be the flower girl. That made sense. I wasn't against it at all. I only asked for one thing. I wanted Bryn to walk with her, side by side. They know each other and they get along. They run around and play together at family gatherings, and I thought having 2 flower girls would be super cute. My fiancé said she wanted the wedding to follow tradition, meaning 1 flower girl. I didn't agree with that logic, so I suggested Bryn could walk in front with a sign or blow bubbles or do something simple. My fiancé shut that down too. She said Bryn could sit with my sister and my parents and enjoy the ceremony from there. That didn't sit right with me. Bryn is the only child on my side of the family. She's important to me, and if this wedding was truly ours, her being involved felt natural. I told my fiancé Bryn would be in the wedding party. Then I texted my sister to check if she was okay with it, and she said yes. Once my fiancé found out, she got mad. She said I was ruining Aubrey's moment. I told her it was my day too, and Bryn wasn't going to be pushed aside. Her sister, Aubrey's mom, joined in and said I was trying to steal attention. Suddenly, I was the villain for wanting my niece to participate. I held my ground and repeated that Bryn would walk with Aubrey. It didn't feel unreasonable. It felt like the first real time I had asked for something from my side of the family. But my fiancé dug her heels deeper and deeper. She didn't offer alternatives. She didn't budge. She acted like I was trying to disrupt the entire event by asking for one kid, my best friend, to walk next to another. I started to wonder if this was about more than a flower girl. It felt weirdly personal. My fiancé and my sister get along just fine. There's no tension there. But she has shown small signs of jealousy when it comes to Bryn. Maybe not jealousy, just comments about how I'm very involved. She once told me I spend too much time with her. She framed it as a joke, but something behind it didn't feel like a joke. So here I am, asking strangers on the internet if I'm wrong for wanting my niece to be a flower girl. It seems pretty simple and quite reasonable, and yet here we are. I'm not trying to take anything away from Aubrey. I'm just trying to include Bryn. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your fiance isn't treating this like it's your wedding too. She's treating it like it's her show. All you asked for was one thing, one little girl who means a lot to you, and she couldn't give you that. Someone who sees a wedding as mine instead of ours is waving a big red flag. And if she's already uncomfortable with how close you are to your niece, imagine how she's going to act once you have kids of your own. Think this through. Not the jerk. The part that worries me the most is your fiance being jealous of a 3-year-old. That's not normal. Bryn lost her dad. You stepped in to give her support and consistency. That's something to celebrate, not something to resent. If your fiance shuts down every compromise, you need to ask yourself whether the real issue is the flower girl spot or her problem with Bryn in general. Weddings expose things that people hide. Don't ignore what this is showing you. Update. I didn't expect the fallout from this to hit so fast, but here we are. This morning I woke up to a silent apartment and the leftover tension in the air from our last conversation. My fiance and I agreed to talk again to figure it out. The wedding, the kid roles, everything. We sat at the kitchen table. I calmly brought up Bryn and Aubrey again. I tried to suggest other ideas, like let Aubrey walk first, let Bryn hand out petals, let Bryn carry something cute, just so it's clear she's not the flower girl. Literally anything that lets them share the moment and lets Bryn be included. My fiance rejected every idea before I finished explaining them. She didn't even pause to think. She repeated the same lines she had used before about tradition, spotlight, one girl, etc. Then she finally stopped. She took a breath, then admitted the real reason. It was all because of Bryn's disability. She said that people would stare. She said the wedding photos would draw attention. She said guests would talk about Bryn instead of the ceremony. She said she didn't want that kind of energy at her wedding. My head felt hot, but I didn't get loud or make a scene. I just stood up, told her exactly what I thought of those words, and called off the wedding. I didn't need to think it over. I didn't need to sleep on it. I didn't need strangers' advice. That was enough. I told her not to worry. There won't be a spotlight to steal anymore because there's no wedding. I packed a bag and left the apartment. I drove to my sister's place and spent the day playing with Bryn. She showed me her teddy wearing a little cape that she made for him. And while she was laughing and talking a mile a minute, I kept thinking about how anyone could look at her and see anything but joy. My phone blew up with missed calls and long texts. Suddenly, my ex-fiance was ready to compromise. Suddenly, she had ideas about how Bryn could participate. Suddenly, tradition didn't matter anymore. I don't know what comes next, but I know what doesn't. There won't be a wedding. I'm done. Thanks. Y'all were right. She wants a wedding, not a marriage. Not the jerk. The update made me gasp and gave me all the ick. First of all, terrible of her to feel that about any 3-year-old, let alone your niece who you obviously adore. Second of all, it's your wedding too, so for most of the wedding party members to be her side, it's a performance more than anything. Finally, weddings can bring to light differences you never thought were there, because for lots of couples, it's the first big event you plan together and have to make tons of decisions and compromises. If she can't compromise on your only niece being a flower girl, do you really think she'll compromise, or even just take your opinion into consideration about big life decisions later on? So, she wanted a wedding that looked perfect on paper.
Yeah, except her version of perfect had the empathy level of a breadstick.
At least OP figured it out before signing anything.
Better to cancel a wedding than spend a lifetime arguing over basic kindness.
Am I the jerk for asking my sister-in-law what she's doing with her degree after she implied my university wasn't prestigious enough? Last night, we were all at my in-laws' place. My husband and I brought our 2-year-old daughter, and his sister came with her husband and their kids. At first, it was a really nice evening. His parents were moving around the kitchen, making snacks for everyone. The kids were playing, and all their toys ended up on the floor. The family gathering felt comfortable, and we were all having fun. At some point, the grown-ups were talking about a distant cousin's kid leaving for university. The usual topics showed up: tuition, dorms, moving out, whether a good school actually matters. Someone mentioned networking and how it opens doors. I said something about how I got my first business analyst job because the interviewer had gone to the same university as me. That shared school connection gave us an easy conversation starter. It wasn't a brag, just the truth. My sister-in-law cut in and said something about how I went to the Mississauga campus. Then she added a reminder that it wasn't the main University of Toronto location. She said it casually, but it was one of those lines that carries a bit of weight, even when the tone sounds light. You know what I mean? But then my husband stepped in right away and said all the campuses fall under the same university. She gave a small shrug. It wasn't hostile, but it was enough to tell me that she didn't really agree. I knew she went to the St. George campus. Everyone in the family knows that because she brings it up a lot, especially during big gatherings. But something in me pushed the next words out faster than I could filter them. I asked where she studied, and she told me St. George again. Then I asked what she was doing with her degree these days. I knew she was a stay-at-home mom, so that's why I'm here. I know that might have been a jerk thing to say. She and her husband decided that together, and they have their own setup. But I said it anyway without thinking it through. She got quiet. Not the normal quiet where someone is thinking, more like a wall went up. She didn't make a scene or anything. She just didn't look at me much for the rest of the evening. Everyone kept chatting about other things, but I could feel the leftover tension sitting there like an open can on the table. Later, when we got home, my husband told me that he thought I crossed a line. He said her comment about my campus wasn't nice, but he didn't think she meant it in a harsh way. He said she can be thoughtless sometimes and didn't realize how it sounded. He said my question hit harder because it sounded like I was calling her degree useless. I don't actually feel that way. She works hard at home with the kids, and I respect that. But my husband said the timing and the tone made it sting. I told him her comment was rude. It's the same university. She implied that mine didn't count, and she didn't soften it. That was what bothered me. Even if she didn't mean it with malice, it was still dismissive. He said he understood why I felt that way, but believed that I still escalated it. A few minutes later, his phone buzzed. It was her. She texted him saying that I was out of line and she didn't appreciate my attitude. He tried smoothing things over. He told her everyone misunderstood each other and we should let it go. She didn't seem satisfied with that. Now I'm stuck between thinking I shouldn't have said it and thinking maybe her comment needed the reality check. I didn't mean to hurt her. I didn't sit there planning to fire back. It just came out. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. She brought up the campus thing first. She knew exactly what she was implying. She was 100% being rude because she felt like hers was better. Your question was valid. What is she doing with her degree? I can't stand people who can dish it out but not take it. She wanted to put you down and couldn't deal with the clapback. And sorry, but your husband is like those teachers that will turn a blind eye until the bullied kid fights back. Soft everyone sucks here. She was rude to imply your degree was worth less than hers. You were rude to imply that you think she's wasted her degree. You didn't have to take the bait. Still, your sister-in-law was making that comparison and she knew it. You hit back. Was it petty? Sure. But you didn't swing first. She set it up and you finished it. Update. My husband told me she had sent him another long message. In her words, she felt hurt and blindsided. He told her that her remark about my campus was thoughtless, and that's what started things. He also told me later that he felt my comment cut deeper because it poked at a sensitive part of her life. I sat with that for a while. I didn't love admitting it, but I could see how my question might have made her feel like her work at home meant nothing. That wasn't my intention. I said it fast without thinking, but sometimes fast words leave slow damage. I told my husband I was ready to apologize if she was too. I didn't want to open the door if she wasn't willing to meet me halfway. Last night, she called. She sounded tired but steady. She said she realized her comment about my campus came off as insulting, even though she didn't mean it to be. She said she respected what I do and how I balance work with motherhood. Hearing her say that felt genuine. She apologized. I told her I was sorry too. I said my comment about her degree was out of line. I said she's a great mom and my words weren't thoughtful. They were just a reaction. She got emotional and I did too. It was one of those quiet moments where you feel everything settle back down. We both agreed to move forward. I don't think either of us is perfect. I don't think she's wasting her degree. I don't think she intended to insult mine. We had a moment. It got sharper than it needed to be, but I'm glad we talked about it and didn't let it turn into a bigger wedge. Not the jerk. You both acted human. People throw little jabs sometimes without thinking. People fire back without thinking. The important thing is you both stepped up and handled it. It takes more strength to fix things than to walk away from them. Good on both of you. Family gets messy, but this is how you keep it healthy. So sister-in-law tried to flex her campus like it was a VIP badge.
And OP hit her with the, "Okay, but what are you doing with it?" special. That reply had precision, straight to the weak spot.
Family dinner turned into a quiet episode of mess around and find out.
Good thing they cleared the air though, or every family reunion would have had background tension you could spread on toast. My boyfriend's optimism and immaturity almost destroyed me financially. My boyfriend and I started dating in July of 2014. He's the biggest optimist I've ever met and lived a relatively cushy life as the only child of divorced parents. At the time, we both lived separately and had jobs that covered all of our bills and then some. He indulged in luxuries like an expensive sports car, a gaming computer, and a purebred dog. This becomes important later. While he was still in school, I had already graduated and was working at my first big kid job. Life was great, and the first 6 months of our relationship were some of the happiest days of my life. In January 2015, everything began to change. My boyfriend was wrongfully terminated from his job. A new supervisor had been angling to replace everyone on his shift with his own friends and waited until after the holiday rush to start making changes. The government sided with my boyfriend in his unemployment claim, and then he began receiving benefits. He decided to focus on finishing school instead of finding another job. This is where the cracks began to show. He was supposed to graduate in May, but he failed a class and couldn't. That meant he had to take summer classes. By June, his savings had run out, and he could only afford either his car payment and insurance or his rent. His lease was up at the end of July, so I agreed to cover his rent and he moved in with me to finish school. A few weeks before his new graduation date, we learned he needed one more elective to graduate. He had to extend his schooling to the fall semester. I demanded that he find a job to help with expenses since I hadn't planned on supporting him for such a long time. Covering him for a month or two was fine, but 6 months or more? No. At the end of July, he started a job as an insurance agent for a reputable company. However, the position was commission-based. Being the eternal optimist, he was drawn in by his manager's talk of unlimited earning potential. I even paid for the certification tests he needed to take. Despite his hard work, building a client base from scratch without family privilege or an existing network was incredibly difficult. He made very little, perhaps $700 from a small deal every few months, but it was nowhere near enough to cover his share of expenses. In July of 2015, we downsized from my fancy downtown apartment to a rundown house on the edge of a poor neighborhood. I paid the security deposit and double rent for both places during the transition, costing about $3,500. By November, my savings were nearly gone. I had to liquidate shares of my family trust to keep us afloat, even though it meant paying a penalty since my grandfather didn't want us accessing the funds before age 25. By December, my trust was empty, and I only had $300 left in savings. Between July and December, I had spent around $17,000 on supporting both of us, his job, his dog, and my dog. We began having recurring fights about money and chores. I expected him to pick up most of the housework as his way of contributing, but he didn't follow through. Instead, he repeated the same optimistic lines from his manager. "It'll get better. Everyone struggles at first. Hang on and we'll make it. Once I make it, we'll be rolling in it." He said this every time we argued. 2 weeks before Christmas, I reached my breaking point. After yet another fight, I stormed out, planning to crash at a friend's place. But as I drove, anger bubbled up inside me. Why should I leave my house, the one I pay for, while he stays there comfortably? I went home and told him he had 10 days to pack his things and leave. He moved in with his dad, and I spent Christmas morning with my dog, returning his gifts online. We started hanging out again in January of 2016, and things initially seemed to be improving. His business appeared to be gaining traction, and he even considered getting his own apartment. I allowed him to move back in under strict conditions.
If he couldn't split expenses evenly, he had to get serious about doing chores and sticking to a budget. It was fine at first, but by April, he had stopped doing chores and I was back to covering 100% of his and his dog's living expenses. When he realized he wouldn't meet his sales quota for the quarter, he asked me to sign up for a policy and then cancel it later so he could meet his numbers. I lost it. I work in capital markets and cannot afford to commit financial fraud for anyone, let alone my boyfriend. I told him I had sacrificed enough and that he couldn't ask me to compromise my integrity. As a side note, a friend of his who agreed to this same scheme still hasn't been reimbursed 5 months later. After a massive argument, he finally stepped up with chores, which he's continued to this day. However, money remained an issue. Even when he did get paid, his car payment swallowed the money. He landed a big case in May and was able to pay his share of rent in June, even offering to cover all of July, which he did. But by mid-July, he was broke again. He informed me at the last minute that he couldn't pay for August rent, leaving me scrambling to cover it. He also couldn't contribute to groceries as promised, which added even more stress. I'm exhausted. I have a great job, paid off all my college debt within 8 months of graduation, and own my car outright. Yet I'm living paycheck to paycheck because I'm supporting him. It's been over a year and there's been no real improvement. His job seems designed for wealthy trust fund kids who can afford to build a client base while being perpetually broke. I admire his optimism, but I'm the one suffering for it, not him. Last night, I told him I wouldn't be renewing the lease and that I'd be moving out on my own. He followed me around the house, pleading with me and asking questions like, "What about us? How do you feel about me? What will it take for me to come with you?" These are questions he's asked during every single fight, and I'm done answering them. I told him it was his life to figure out, not mine. I can't believe he feels abandoned after everything I've done for him. He doesn't seem to understand how hurtful it is when he tries to cover his half of the bills with empty promises and motivational quotes. It feels so disrespectful, and I've told him this repeatedly, yet he doesn't seem to listen. Why would he? I've made it easy for him by constantly picking up the slack and not enforcing my boundaries. At this point, I feel like I'm his safety net. He knows I won't let him or his dog starve, so he doesn't take responsibility for his finances. It's become clear to me that his unrelenting optimism blinds him to reality. He overestimates his potential success and underestimates the consequences of his failures. I don't trust his promises anymore because he's barely kept any of them. He hasn't matured because he hasn't had to face the full weight of his choices. Those consequences have fallen on me. I miss the man I met during those first 6 months. Back then, he had a steady job, and I thought we could build a life together. Now, I feel like I've been parenting him instead of partnering with him. I'm heartbroken because I still love him, but that love feels like a burden now. I wonder if our relationship can survive these changes or if I'm naive to believe he'll grow out of this. I can't keep sacrificing myself for his sake. He needs to face reality and take risks without dragging me down with him. Part of me hopes he'll become the person I fell in love with, but another part knows I've reached my limit. There's no hope. You cannot change anyone but yourself. He's the only one who can change himself. Instead of changing, he's doubling down on a philosophy that has proven to be a failure. Why isn't he getting another job? Even if he can't let himself end this dream and quit, he could at least work a second job, one that would actually pay minimum wage. OP. He still has office hours during the day, and it infuriates me that they don't pay him for that. He can't get a second job for that reason, as he's meeting clients before and after common working hours. He can't even be an Uber driver because his fancy car is on the restricted cars list, and there's no way he's going to take my car too. I hate his stupid car so much. It represents how financially immature he is because he didn't even use his money wisely when he had it and continues to do himself over to this day. Did I mention he hasn't paid taxes or registered the car either because he doesn't have the money? I'm not sure who will end up paying that inevitable ticket, but it sure as heck won't be me. While he's certainly to blame for being irresponsible, I think you also share the blame for spending over $17,000 on someone you had been dating for less than 2 years at that point, and then taking him in again and putting yourself in the same situation. You ask if your relationship is repairable, but this isn't just about what he can do to shape up. What are you going to do to avoid making a series of poor choices again in the future when he messes up? You can't control the choices he makes, but you can control the choices you make, and you've made some very questionable ones. Personally, I would never want to put myself in a relationship with someone who can't support himself and has drained my bank account like that. I would feel like his mother, not his partner, and that's supremely unattractive. You're better off cutting your losses and learning from this. Update 1 month later. After I made this post, I decided to truly cut him off. I changed the Wi-Fi password, froze the credit card I had given him, applied to close our joint accounts, and threw out any gifts I ever gave him. We had been planning to attend a dork convention over Labor Day in Atlanta, something I had budgeted for both of us over a year ago. I told him he couldn't go unless he paid for his half of the hotel and tickets, $600. I'm not sure why I didn't just tell him outright that he was out of his mind if he thought he could go. I shouldn't have played any games, but in hindsight, I'm glad I did because he texted me, promising me he'd have $1,000 to me by the end of August. That was in writing. I was floored. Suddenly, he could find money for a weekend of partying and attempt to reel me back in? I told him I would apply that to August bills and that he'd need to start paying off the $25,000 he owed me for supporting him over the past year before spending money on luxuries like out-of-state vacations. He didn't respond and slept on the couch again that night. That was Friday. Saturday morning, he left the house at 9 a.m. with his dog, leaving all his belongings behind. I piled all his and his dog's stuff under the desk, removed any pictures of him from the house, and blocked him everywhere except Facebook and text. Then I went to 2 rental house showings, fell in love with one, put down a deposit, went on multiple walks with my dog, and spent the evening drinking wine through Twizzlers with my next-door neighbor and her boyfriend. He didn't come home that night. Sunday was blissful. I spent the day working on cosplays and outfits for the convention, goofing off with my neighbor and my dog. I kept waiting for a wave of sadness or regret to hit me, but it never came. After 24 hours with him gone and knowing his name wasn't on the lease, I texted him to say his claim to residency was null and he needed to schedule a time to come get his stuff with 24 hours notice. He said he'd come that night. I reminded him about the notice policy and he agreed to come Monday evening. Monday, he showed up with his father's truck, collected his belongings, and returned the key. By Wednesday, his best friend texted me like nothing was wrong. On Thursday, I texted my ex about when I could expect the promised check. He didn't respond. I emailed him Friday morning and sent a final follow-up the next day, acknowledging his apparent no-contact approach. That's when he asked me to meet for coffee on Sunday night. At the coffee shop, he avoided the topic of repayment entirely. Instead, we talked about our feelings. He said he felt betrayed and abandoned, claiming that my decision to cut him off financially proved that I never really supported him. He insinuated that if I truly believed in us, I wouldn't expect repayment. I sat there stunned as he painted himself as the victim of my financial boundaries. When I realized he genuinely felt just as used as I did, my stomach dropped. I knew I was done. I let him finish talking, then we parted ways. He asked if he could contact me, and I said I needed a break. The next day, I emailed him about the $1,000 he promised and reminded him we hadn't discussed repayment during our meeting. He didn't respond for days. Just as I was leaving town for the convention, he finally replied, saying the money was on its way. When I returned home, I found the check in an unpostmarked envelope in my mailbox. It creeped me out. He had trespassed on my property while I was away. I cashed the check and emailed him, requesting he use the postal service for future payments. His reply was a mix of mushy "I love you" sentiments and excuses, claiming he was too nice and couldn't say no, which supposedly led to his neglect of both himself and me. The apology was laughable. It essentially boiled down to, "I was so nice and helpful that I drained you of your money and energy. My bad." I responded, "You broke my heart and my bank account. It will be a long time before both are fixed, and by then, I hope I won't be foolish enough to trust you a third time. I'll respond to emails about repayment. Otherwise, good luck." His final email was a desperate plea. "If I could take everything back that I did, I would. I love you, OP, with all my heart. I could have prevented it all. I could have taken action, but I let you slip away. That'll be one of the biggest mistakes of my life. I'm truly, truly sorry for hurting you. I just want you to be happy. That's all I've ever wanted." I moved out of the house we had shared to a similar one a few streets away. The move kept me busy enough to not dwell on the breakup. I threw out all of our memories and photos in the process, creating a space that was entirely mine. Settling into my new place, I expected to feel crushed, but instead, I felt humiliated. At the convention, there were a few lonely moments where I needed a cig to calm down, but overall, I partied hard and enjoyed myself. Now, I barely have the urge to check his Instagram. Every time I see a picture of him, it's just a reminder of how naive I was to believe he was the one. I'm distrustful of my feelings now. Back then, I had no doubt we'd be together forever. It felt as certain as my own name. These days, even when I meet someone cute or have a great conversation, I have no desire to pursue anything more. My feelings led me so far astray last time that I don't trust them enough to act on them. But that's it. It's over, and life goes on. I'm 25 male, and my girlfriend, who's 23, gave me an ultimatum to propose. My girlfriend basically told me last night that if she didn't receive a ring by the end of the year, she would break up with me. The problem is, I already have a ring and I was planning on proposing on her birthday this weekend. I met my girlfriend in college and we've been together for almost 3 years. She's my best friend and I honestly can't imagine my life without her. I've never felt this way about anyone else before. We've talked about getting married and starting a family many times. The thing is, I've been working hard on my business, trying to become financially stable so I can support our future family. My girlfriend knows this, which is why the situation feels so bizarre. Currently, my girlfriend doesn't have a job. I've been supporting both of us, which I don't mind because I'm in a good position financially and it's something that I can handle. Over the past few months, I've finally started to see the returns from my business. All the effort I've put in for the last 4 years is finally paying off, and this year is shaping up to be our best year yet. My girlfriend has been casually looking at houses, not to buy, but just to see what's available for when we're ready. Everything seemed to be falling into place. Her birthday is this Sunday, and as far as she knows, we're hosting a party at our place. However, I had a completely different plan in mind. I had this entire proposal organized with her best friend. Her friend was going to bring her to the aquarium where we had our first date. I had already spoken with the aquarium staff and arranged for them to play our song over the speakers. I was planning to propose in front of the penguin exhibit, her favorite spot. I even hired a professional photographer to capture the moment. I had already spoken to her parents and received their blessing. Everything was set for a magical proposal. But last night, everything seemed to unravel. While we were having dinner, my girlfriend suddenly broke down in tears. I've never seen her like that before. She told me she didn't understand why I wouldn't marry her. She said she's been there for me since the beginning through all of my struggles. Then she dropped a bombshell. She said that if I didn't propose to her by the end of the year, she would leave me. At first, I thought she might have found out about my plans and was teasing me, but her tears and emotions were completely genuine. I think she might be feeling left out or insecure because many of her friends are getting married or engaged. It's possible she's comparing our relationship to theirs. Still, her ultimatum really caught me off guard. I don't want to propose because of pressure, and now I'm questioning everything. My friends have advised me against rewarding this type of behavior, but I'm not sure what to think. This is the first time I've seen her this upset, and it's shaken me up. Update. First, thanks to everyone who shared advice. Many have asked why my girlfriend isn't working. She graduates next year with a degree in biology, but we live in a rural state, and she's been having a hard time finding a job. She has been a huge help to me in my business, though, and I've told her that she doesn't have to work if she doesn't want to. I don't mind supporting her financially because we've always been such a team. After last night's incident, I spoke to her best friend to try and make sense of things. Her friend admitted she might have accidentally said something that confused or upset her, but I didn't tell her about my girlfriend's breakdown. My girlfriend has been distant since the conversation and is giving me the silent treatment. I'm not sure if she's just processing her emotions or if she's genuinely angry. Despite everything, I'm still leaning towards going through with the original plan. I want to marry her. I've wanted that for years. The ultimatum bothers me though. After everything we've been through together, how could she say she would leave me? Her best friend and little sister are flying in tonight for her birthday party, and 2 of my closest friends, who are like brothers to me, will be there too. Yes, they're single, and I know some of you will roll your eyes at their advice. Some people have also asked why I chose her birthday for the proposal. The truth is, her older sister got engaged on her birthday, and she once told me that she thought it was the most romantic thing. I've had the ring for 2 years now. We saw it at a mall during college, and she pointed out that it was her dream ring. I secretly bought it back then and only just finished paying it off last month. Do I think she would actually leave me on January 1st if I didn't propose? Honestly, I don't think she would. She might storm out for the day, but I know her well enough to believe she'd be back home before it got dark. Still, I don't want our engagement to feel like it happened because of an ultimatum. This is supposed to be a joyful milestone, not something clouded by doubt. For now, I'm trying to focus on what I know for sure. I love her, and I want to spend my life with her. Are you not sure about doing it this weekend because it will seem forced, or because you no longer are sure you want to marry her? Your answer changes my advice. Well, at least we know she was going to say yes. That's pretty complicated. Because on one hand, I can understand how you'd want to put things on pause until you can sit down and have a talk about both of your feelings about marriage and engagement timelines. Ideally, it would have been better to do this before she broke down on you, but the second best time is now. On the other hand, there isn't necessarily anything about this sudden ultimatum that necessarily changes your plans. You were planning on proposing to her anyway, well within her timeline expectations, and you could always talk to her later about how you had this proposal planned well before she gave you the ultimatum. In my opinion, have a talk with her as soon as possible about each of your feelings on marriage and wedding timelines, and confirm with her that you're on the same page. Then carry on with the Sunday proposal. I'm sorry to tell you, OP, but for me, this behavior is a really big red flag. Breaking down because you didn't propose after just 3 years with your age, not having a job but spending money on your dime while you've been busting your tail for years and setting an ultimatum for the proposal? To be really honest, it sounds to me like someone who wants to get married so she can have a certain financial safety for when you guys split. That when she leaves, she'll take a lot of money with her. So please, OP, if you still want to propose to her and proceed your plan, make sure you make really good arrangements when you get married. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his girlfriend? Please let us know. My ex has power of attorney and is trying to sell off everything I own. Background: I was out of the country for over 2 months while being treated by specialists for medical problems. During that time, I stored my personal valuables with a storage company that was supposed to offer good security. Since I don't have close family, I didn't want to leave things like my computers sitting in the apartment for such a long time. I also ensured that my payments were set to automatically go to a specific amount, as I have renters in my old house and needed to make sure certain bills were paid without my intervention. I thought I had everything set up properly to allow me to focus on my treatment and return to things as I left them. Some time ago, when I was in a lot of pain and on heavy medications, I had a lawyer help me ensure that my now ex partner could make decisions for me if I ever became incapacitated. Honestly, I had almost completely forgotten about this arrangement because I was in such a foggy state of mind at the time. I barely remember anything about it. The night before my flight, my ex told me they couldn't be with me anymore because of my health problems. They said I wasn't going to make it and they didn't want to be around for that. My issues are severe, and while my life expectancy might not be as long as it could have been, their words devastated me. At the time, I couldn't mentally handle the situation, so I simply said, okay, and I left for my trip. We had been together for 16 months, but we weren't strictly living together. Fast forward to the present. I returned to find that my ex had somehow started taking and possibly selling everything I owned. They had paperwork claiming I was incapacitated in addition to the power of attorney I had granted them. However, I was never incapacitated during my treatment. I have no idea what doctor could have signed off on such a claim. While I was away, my ex used this alleged documentation to check my belongings out of storage. I have no idea where my things are now, and I'm terrified they've already been sold. They also took items from my apartment. The tenants in my house were told by my ex that I was bedridden and that they had to move out because my house was being sold. These tenants were on a month-to-month lease, and they took my ex at their word, moving out before I even got back. When I returned, they informed me that a realtor had been showing my house to prospective buyers. I managed to contact the realtor. Once I explained the situation, they freaked out. They told me the house had already been listed far below market value, a buyer had been found, and documents had been signed. Some money had even exchanged hands, and the buyers were already preparing to move in. I demanded the realtor cancel everything, but they said the paperwork my ex provided appeared legitimate. They needed time to figure out how to handle this. In the meantime, the account I set up before my trip had been drained to mere pennies, causing me to miss an important payment. The bank confirmed that my ex accessed the account and everything appeared in order because of the claim I was incapacitated. My ex had known about this account and its purpose. They likely gathered the details from my apartment before I left. I spoke to both my ex and the police. My ex has been unresponsive for the most part. When I confronted them at their door and screamed at them, they eventually told me they acted because I was in a coma, which is completely untrue. Through the door, I think I heard them say something like, "You won't need it anyway." The police have been less helpful than I had hoped. I tried to report my ex for theft regarding my belongings from storage, but they told me it was a civil matter. When I explained the broader situation, the officer seemed unsure how to respond. Sitting at the station feels like a waste of time. They keep telling me to return the next day to speak with someone else. Apparently, officers went to my ex's place and were shown the paperwork which seems to have stalled their investigation. Tomorrow, I have an appointment with a lawyer who specializes in elder mistreatment and power of attorney fraud, as it was the closest expertise I could find. If they can't help, I don't know where to turn next. Is there something specific I can say to the police to get them to act quickly and arrest my ex? I want to believe this will all be resolved eventually, but I feel so overwhelmed and unsure. How done for am I? Edit. I'm a woman in my early 30s and my ex is a man around the same age. Imagine if your own parents stole your identity so they could buy your sister a house. That's exactly what happens in our next story. It just popped up on your screen. Give it a tap, come have a listen. You won't believe what happens next.